Week 7 featured more big games than can fit into one night. But no worries, we'll catch you up on all the latest right here on the Varsity 360 Gridiron Report. And it starts right now. Hi there, everyone. Mark Coleman here from the Virginia Varsity Sports Network. This is the Varsity 360 Gridiron Report. Very happy you found us here at Fredericksburg.com. Happy to be partnered, as always, with the good folks from the Freelance Star and a very busy sports department. It's been a lot of sports stories going on here lately. Happy to be joined by the assistant sports editor for the Freelance Star, one of my favorite members of the FLS varsity team. It is Justin Rice.
Hey, Mark.
How you doing, man?
Good to see you, man.
Man, have you caught your breath? What a time to be involved in sports. Not just high school, but I mean at the college and professional level as well. It's an active time.
Yeah, there's a lot going on for sure, and you know the high school postseason is upon us with the other sports besides football. And
yeah, there's a lot going on.
It's a crazy time.
And then the weather has to kick in as well. So let me tell you about what this young man did on Friday night. Friday night is the normal high school football night. Started off at JM. Lightning came through the area. I think everyone experienced that. So the JM game was waved off. It was postponed till Saturday. You hot-footed it to Colonial Forge, trying to catch their game that was in a lightning delay. They ended up canceling or postponing that game as well. So you went up 95 a little bit further north to Woodridge. You did end up catching the Riverbend Woodridge game that started at 9:30 and it ended
about 11:45.
Yeah, close to midnight. And you still got the story in time to make the Saturday paper.
Still made the paper. Don't ever question my commitment to covering high school sports.
Never. And then that was just the beginning of your weekend.
Indeed. You saw Colonial Forge on Saturday. Spent the day Tuesday at 6A and 5A golf. Watched Riverbend's Jake Miles put up a nice showing. The Bears were second as a team. Okay. And then watched Jacoby Smith from Stafford. He finished second in the 5A individual tournament. Yeah, so saw lots of good golf on Tuesday. And
weather was a little bit nicer on Tuesday than it was on Friday evening. At least.
A lot of walking, a lot of sun. Pretty good day. Yeah.
This crew is awfully busy. This is not typical, but it's not terribly atypical for them. They're always on the go. Very committed. Maybe in more ways than we want to talk about, but very dedicated as well to sports and especially to high school sports around the area. So certainly appreciate the time and everything that they do for high school sports around the football, Fredericksburg area that is. Let's jump into some football now, why won't we? A number of very exciting and interesting games for Week 7. Perhaps none of them more intriguing, at least to me, than Cortland and Chancellor, a battle of very strong Spotsylvania County teams. Justin, this game was close, 6-6 at halftime.
Yeah, 6-6 at halftime. Then they swapped touchdowns again, and it's 13-13. And then Blair Lawson with the big 64-yard run, part of his 13-carry, 153-yard night for the Cougars, and that sparks a run of 3 straight Cortland touchdowns, and they pull away with it. You know, I think 34-13. I think it was much closer than that. Yeah. You know, the Cougars' running game really sort of exerted its strength, I think, as the game wore on.
Yeah. Lawson with 2 touchdowns carrying the ball on that one. But this was a matchup of 2 very talented running backs on opposing teams here. A theme that we're going to see a couple of times over the course of this week. Mario Wisdom from Chancellor, 20 carries, 109 yards rushing. Was not able to get it into the end zone, though. And Chancellor had some missed opportunities in the first half. I know Coach Oliver was rather frustrated by. They left some points on the field, as it were, only getting 6 points.
Yeah, and he wanted to see a little better execution from his team, and you know, certainly a better result for his team. I know the Cortland fans were excited. We had a great picture on the front page of the whole newspaper there of Cortland fans, and it's just so great to see this rivalry sort of recaptured and rekindled. And not that it's ever really simmered down, but when both teams are really strong like that and playing a good game, and you know, we've got updated PowerPoints out, and they're both right there in the top half of their division of the 4A East.
Sure.
Portland, of course, number 1 now, sort of jumped over Chancellor here with this big win.
Right.
You know, this is a big one. Maybe they see each other again down the road. We'll
Perhaps.
see.
That would be exciting.
But I think Blair Lawson is the guy to talk about from this game. You know, Cortland returned 2/3 of that really potent backfield, and the question was who would be that third piece, and and Lawson comes over from Fredericksburg Christian, where he was an all-area pick for us last year, and just has a really big game. Probably his most impactful. He's had good games, but I think this is the one that was the most impactful for the Cougars, and he certainly showed what he could do. And it's a really good win for Cortland, and I think Chancellor's going to look now and maybe look for a second chance down the road.
They've got a few more tough tests, or at least looming ahead of them. We won't get too far ahead on that, but Cortland, certainly a big win for them, sets them up nicely. We've seen them go on some nice long winning streaks over the course of regular season, putting themselves in good position for postseason. This certainly, Larry Lawson has snapped into this offense quite well. But on the defense as well, they've got a lot of kids that go both ways, and I can't remember if he plays linebacker or defensive back. I think he's a safety, actually. Nonetheless, he's on the defensive side and a very active member of that defense as well. An impressive team.
Yeah, certainly. But we knew that coming in. And it's not taking anything away from Chancellor, also a very good team.
Sure.
These two are both in good shape, sort of control their own destiny. They both have a JM matchup left to go.
That's right.
But either one of them can assure themselves to be home for the first week of the playoffs and maybe again for the second week, if they can win out.
You love it when the PowerPoint starts getting
I love PowerPoints.
That's awesome. Cortland with the 34-13 victory over Chancellor. Exciting matchup of two Stafford County powers. Both teams come into the game at 4-1, Brook Point and North Stafford. I really expected this one to be a track meet here, a basketball score almost. Brook Point comes out with a fairly high-scoring win, 35-21. They get out to a quick early lead, though.
Yeah, 28-7 after the third quarter. I was shocked. I was following the game on Twitter from the Colonial Forge game and was just shocked. 28-7 earlier for Brook Point. And that's a huge day, and I think a huge statement for the Blackhawks, where you weren't really sure, is it for real? They've been beating up those Prince William County schools, and here they come with a huge win against their rival. They've not played any other team more in history than they have North Stafford, and this was a big one, especially for their defense.
No doubt.
Especially for their defense.
No doubt. Impressive performance on the defense. Let's get to them first then. Brook Point, 8 sacks, 4 turnovers, 2 block punts, special teams I suppose on that, but still, and they hold this very potent North Stafford offense to 21 points. Awfully impressive on the defensive side of the ball. They had some pretty impressive offensive performance as well, though.
Sure enough, Damone Drew with another big day, 32 carries for 198 yards, including a first quarter touchdown that helped get them up 14-0 right out of the gate. And Brook Point again. Brock Carnes with another good day, 14 of 20 passing for 143 yards. He threw for 2 scores. Just a good all-around effort from the Blackhawks.
We mentioned in the Cortland Chancellor game that it was a matchup of 2 very talented running backs. I think maybe the top 2 running backs in the area were featured in this game. Maybe I shouldn't be quite so fast. 2 of the top running backs in the area. Maybe that's a little bit more fair to say. But it's they're in elite company here. Let's say
certainly, yeah.
Damone Drew for Brook Point. Devin Ford, the freshman for North Stafford, 22 carries, 176 yards rushing. He fails to get into the end zone. But an interesting matchup here on the Stafford side and on the Spotsy side. 2 teams with very strong running games and very talented running backs.
Well, absolutely. And but I think maybe Brook Point was the more physical team. And in fact, Devin Ford, one of my favorite quotes of the whole season so far, told Taft at the game. We got our butts whooped.
Yeah.
I think they really feel like Brook Point took it to them a little bit.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Maybe they did.
They were more physical and out-physicaled them.
Certainly.
That sounds like something a coach would say, right? Yeah. So an impressive victory. Brook Point moves to 5-1 on the season. North Stafford still 4-2. How about PowerPoints for these 2 teams?
Okay, PowerPoints, we can do that. These guys are all in the top half of 5A North, and you still got lots of those games between the Stafford schools to play. We're still going to see Massaponax and Mountain View.
Right.
We're still going to see Massaponax and Brook Point. We're still going to see Massaponax and North Stafford. They're going to still play Mountain View. It's so too early to call. These guys, I think, are all going to end up in the top half. They're going to end up playing at home, but as long as one team doesn't shut it down and take a bunch of losses, if they keep swapping and trading wins, these are all going to be teams that are going to end up at home for the early rounds of the playoffs.
Yeah, impressive.
Yeah, certainly.
An exciting game with a very impressive outcome for Brook Point. They get the 35-21 victory over North Stafford. The undefeated Massaponax Panthers hosted Stafford this past weekend. Stafford has stepped down to the 5A. They're not finding the sledding any easier, however. Massaponax with the 55-0 victory over Stafford. Joey Bennon with impressive first half, 14 carries, 119 yards, and a touchdown rushing. 7 different players for Ponax had rushing touchdowns in this game.
That's the first time we've had that stat. Oh, wait. No, it's not. No, that's completely typical Massaponax. Yeah. Hand it to a lot of guys, score a lot of touchdowns, put the game away early, roll to yet another regular season win. You know, they're approaching 30 consecutive regular season wins. Got some tough ones to go, but the streak sort of continues for another week.
Yeah, and it's up. I'm going to say it's 28 now.
I believe you're correct.
Prove me wrong. I believe it's 28. They certainly have looked impressive, and this game certainly was the case. I think the story here, though, Justin, to sidestep the game itself, Stafford has been going through a lot of challenges, and it came to light this past week, the firing of one of their assistant coaches for maybe some improprieties and disciplinary action, somewhere along those lines. Lots of controversy going on around Stafford.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't say how much of a distraction that's been for the team. You know, certainly Taft Coghill has done a wonderful job reporting that for the Freelance Star, and sort of covered the ins and outs of it a little bit. You know, I couldn't say how much of a distraction that's been. It certainly couldn't have helped. And I certainly couldn't say where that's going to resolve itself to. But, you know, Coach Marshall, the assistant coach from Stafford who was let go, you know, we had another story, a follow-up on that in Tuesday morning's paper about the amount of support he's received. And, you know, I certainly wasn't there. I certainly can't testify to the specifics of the occasion. But I can say that it's been near universal support that we've heard from in terms of comments to stories, in terms of people who've spoken to me directly, things on Twitter. There's been an awful lot of support for Ken Marshall and for bringing him back to the fold. You know, I don't know if that happens or not. It's a weird situation.
Yeah, it seems unlikely.
But it seems like Coach Marshall really wants his name cleared.
Right.
And, you know, as best I can tell, maybe deservedly so.
From my opinion, the information that has been shared with the public does not seem to warrant a firing. Perhaps a suspension, but even that seems a little bit suspect to me. Interesting you use the term universal, or at least near universal support, because it hasn't just been local. This has gotten some national attention. He's receiving support from outside of the greater Fredericksburg area, so that's got to make him feel some sense of vindication at least.
Well, I think certainly, and you know, the Stafford County school system, it's interesting because we don't know their side of the firing. They've adopted it sort of a closed mouth policy, and you know, as a newspaper guy, I'm against that. I certainly understand that though from an organizational standpoint, that they want to keep it internal. But if they have a side that's different, gosh, it'd be nice to hear.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what we're getting is this was a good guy and a good coach, and it doesn't seem like, based on what we've been told, what we've reported, maybe undeserved.
So, regarding the Indians, do you think that this is going to impact them? They've had a tough season already. It's hard to say if that's going to have a negative impact. 55, lots of good teams have lost big to Massaponax. So this game, let's put that one aside. They still have some games to play. You feel like they're going to be able to focus on that?
Well, there's a lot of games to play, and I feel like, yeah, you know, you like to think that high school kids can put that aside and they want to go out and play well and win. I mean, but gosh, the schedule doesn't get any easier.
Yeah, it doesn't. You
know, you've got North Stafford this week in the battle for the bell, their big rival, and you still have Brook Point to play, and you still have Mountain View to play, and you got Potomac coming down the road, and you know there's a lot of tough games coming for Stafford, and the Indians just haven't quite been able to pull it together this year.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Massaponax continues to roll. 7 different players scoring rushing touchdowns, and they roll up 55 points, a 55-0 drubbing of Stafford. Mountain View Wildcats and Potomac tangled. Mountain View looking to remain undefeated on the season, and they get the 35-13 victory over the Patriots. Impressive performance from Mountain View.
Yeah, you know, another one of these same things where they're getting all their guys involved. Jameel Collison-Kofi with 23 carries for 155 yards, scored 2 more touchdowns. You know, Ahmad Tweedy, 13 carries for 81 yards and threw for 2 more scores. Yeah. And of course, Trey Coghill, I think, is certainly one of the best receivers in the area. Very impressive to me the time I saw Mountain View this year. 3 catches for 50 yards, catches another touchdown pass. Mountain View slightly passes Massaponax in the 5A North Power Points. We've talked about this week.
Yeah.
All these Stafford teams are going to start playing each other. who knows, take them all, throw them up in the air, and they're going to land in the 5A North somehow.
In terms of making the playoffs, absolutely.
How we ordered them.
Yeah, I feel, you shake them up a little bit. I have a feeling that Masconomet and Mountain View are going to rise to the top of it. But I think that they have demonstrated so far that they are, impressive, powerful teams. That's not to take anything away from the North Staffords and the Brook Points of the world, but this Mountain View team is awfully impressive. Massaponic's team is awfully impressive. I just got to believe that they're going to, outside of the games that they play head-to-head there, I think that they're going to really...
I don't like to trot this out there, but I am a Brook Point alum, and gosh, I hope the Brook Point fans light you up on Twitter. Hit him up on Twitter and let him know that he is deemed Mountain View and Massaponic's the two best teams from Conference 15.
Sure, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me why I'm wrong. I'm wrong a lot, so it's not going to hurt my feelings in the slightest. Just look at my picks on the FLS Varsity site. Although actually I'm not doing too bad right now, but that'll probably change.
The good news is we're going to solve this thing on the field.
Yeah.
All these guys. And this
doesn't matter what I think.
Mountain View, Potomac, this was a good one for me because Potomac coming into the game was of course 3-2. And I wasn't really sure, were they going to be another team that factored into how that conference shook out? And, I think they did hold Mountain View to 35. Mm-hmm. That's not something a lot of teams have done. So we'll see if Potomac can be another team, sort of a wild card. They're a team that's probably in the playoff picture. They're going to be playing these Stafford schools with a lot of wins, score some power points.
Right.
I think Potomac is a playoff team. I think Mountain View, Massaponic's, North Stafford, Brook Point, is that the entirety of Conference 15 except for Stafford. These are all playoff teams.
Right.
Mountain View with another impressive win. Here we go, Mountain View, Brook Point this Friday.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. Mountain View and their triplets with the 35-13 victory over Potomac. Colonial Forge hosted Forest Park in a game that was pushed to Saturday due to the lightning. Justin, I guess it took your second try to actually see this game play out, but you were there for this one.
Yeah, I did, and Connor Riddle is the guy who I sort of zoned in on for this game. He's a linebacker, he's a safety for the Forge defense. He sort of does it all. Blocked 2 punts that set up 2 early scores for the Eagles when their rushing game was really struggling. They had negative rushing yards in the first half.
Yeah.
Riddle sort of makes these big special teams plays and sort of gets in it. He's blocked 5 kicks this year.
That's what your story said. 5 blocked punts on the season.
Not an overwhelming athlete, but everybody up and down the Forge roster will tell you what a smart kid he is. The son of a coach. Coach Bill Brown told me he literally goes to coaching clinics and listens and learns and studies the game. He's the quarterback of the defense. He says, Bill Brown told me, he says, even when I mess up, Connor's there getting me straight in alignments and personnel and what we're doing. Just a real smart kid who gets it done that way.
How many state championships does Coach Brown have under his belt? And he's getting corrected by a high school.
From a high school kid.
Wow.
But now that being said, Rohan Martin had a great game. 5 touchdowns. I mean, you had 5 rushing touchdowns. It's doing something right. The Eagles, the rushing game, they pieced it back together. They got it going. Rohan had especially a great second half. 17 carries for 72 yards. Scored the 5 touchdowns. He was the beneficiary of, for instance, the 2 block punts. They had short fields, and Rohan was the guy that got the ball. And let me tell you, Ethan Garwood, 15 of 19, 203 yards.
Very efficient.
A touchdown throwing. A 50-yard strike to Roman Williams. One of the prettiest throws you're going to see all year. Deep, long, got it out there. Through a defender's arms, Williams comes down with it, and it's a 50-yard touchdown pass. Like, not a throw it 4 yards and make a play. Right. It was Garwood through the air 50 yards to Williams for the touchdown.
Nice.
I think the Eagles, maybe not on their best day, got a really good team victory.
Okay. And actually, that's been a recurring theme, I believe, for the Eagles this season. It's been a lot of team efforts, not a lot of. They've got some good individual players, but they are playing and gelling well as a team. I've been impressed, by the way. They're 6-1. I mean, what's not to be impressed?
Yeah, 6-1 and leading their half of the conference the 6A South, leading their half of that division in really good shape to be at home for some playoff games. And you're right. If it's not Martin, they've got a couple different running backs that are getting it done for him. I think Garwood for a sophomore has looked really, really good, really accurate, and takes the throws that they give him. Finds the open guy, doesn't really force it. I've seen him make 1 or 2 sophomore plays. I've seen him make a lot of junior, senior plays. You know, he's going to carry him, I think, for a good ways. And the running game is better than what it was in the first half against Forest Park.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, Colonial Forge with the 42-22 victory over Forest Park. JM and Caroline tangled. JM coming away with a 42-0 victory. Just another impressive performance from the Yellow Jackets
Your
here.
Unsurprising result of the week, maybe. James Monroe, it's DJ Weldon's turn for a big game. He had 19 carries for 175 yards. You know, they've rotated a bunch of different backs. I think Weldon's been the guy that's impressed me the most in terms of maybe breakaway-edness, maybe big play-edness. You know, I think he's the guy that we'll see. It'll be interesting if James Monroe sticks with sort of a rotation like they've used the last couple of weeks, or as we get the season goes along, if they just start handing it mostly to one guy. We'll see. Weldon was, of course, the big rusher against the Cavaliers. A.J. Felton with another good game. Their quarterback, 9 carries for 37 yards, 4 touchdowns.
4 touchdowns.
You know, just a big game for JM and controlled it just like they should control it against Caroline.
Yeah, no doubt. So they took control early and put this one away. They moved to 5-1 on the season. They still have a couple of big games, challenging games for them at least, looming ahead of them. But, you know, this sort of it looks like the schedule is setting up nicely for JM to prepare for what is likely to be tough competition in the playoffs. You know, they've got Cortland, they've got Chancellor coming up. It's, you know.
Yeah, and the Cortland Chancellor games are going to be tough tests for the Jackets. I think that's certain. But the good news for JM is this. I don't think their playoff position, if they go 0-2 against Cortland and Chancellor, I don't think their playoff position really degrades much at all. You know, I think, I don't want to say it's okay for JM to lose, but it's okay. It's certainly not the end of the world. And if you win 1 or 2 of those, you're in really good shape.
You get, you know, that's a double word score right there, maybe a triple word score. But if nothing else, they are able to judge themselves against some tougher competition, learn something possibly about themselves. I mean, you with all due respect for Caroline, they've had a difficult season. They fell to 0-6. You know, they did not put up a strong competition for JM. For JM to get better, they're going to have to play these tough teams and learn how to deal with those kinds of potentially adversity to see what's going to happen in the playoffs.
And those weeks are coming, and I think the Jackets know it.
Yeah. JM with a 42-0 victory over Caroline. Riverbend took a trip up the road to visit Woodridge. This game actually was played Friday night. It was a very late start. Mr. Rice, you were at this game. Kickoff was after 9:30, I believe, yeah?
Yeah, the latest high school football game I've ever covered.
Wow.
and you know, and the story for this one is I actually had the pleasure of sitting in the booth with the Woodridge coaches during the game. They allowed me a seat, you know, on sort of a soggy night.
Yeah.
And Tyler Thomas frustrated the coaches from Woodridge. How do we block this guy? Just an absolute dominating, especially in the first half before Woodridge maybe adjusted a little bit. Thomas, 6 tackles, 5 for loss, 2 sacks. The Bears hold Woodridge to -9 yards rushing. I believe if you add it up, Riverbend has allowed net 0 yards rushing in their last 3 games.
Awfully impressive run defense. Tyler Thomas is a big part of that. They've got a very impressive defensive line. Taiwan Garbutt, of course, gets a lot of attention. He's at one end. Samar Hassan at another defensive line position has played awfully well. He had a big interception return for a touchdown.
Yeah, as a defensive lineman, I think it might have been Tyler Thomas getting pressure on the Woodridge quarterback, who throws the ball directly into the gut of
Samar the Hammer.
There you go. And he takes it back. Defensive lineman's dream. 83 yards for the interception return for a touchdown. And then Dean Hassan with the 56-yard scoop and score for another big defensive play. The Riverbend defense played fantastic. Again, Tyler Thomas played outstanding. Had just a dominating performance. You know, it's really hard sometimes when we're watching offensive plays and keeping stats and so on. Hard to notice defensive linemen. Tyler Thomas stood out.
I like where you're going with this. Are we going to see a defensive player earn Player of the Week honors this week?
I think you might be onto something.
How about that?
That is the case. Tyler Thomas, Freeland Star Player of the Week.
Tyler Thomas, congratulations. Tyler Thomas from Riverbend High School. He is the Freelance Star Player of the Week. Outstanding performance. Great defensive performance for the Bears here. Jordan DeMarco, the quarterback for Riverbend, did have a touchdown rushing and passing. Riverbend's played a lot of very close games. This is only their second win of the season. But in terms of playoffs, they've played some tough schedule, and they may be clinging to a playoff spot here. Are you ready to call it?
I don't know. How about this? This is what I'll call. If Riverbend beats Freedom this week, and I think they do, and Riverbend beats Garfield the following week, and I think they do, Riverbend's going to be a playoff team.
Wow. All right. You've gotten to see them play now. This is a strong team. They have a couple. They have more than a couple. They've got 4 out of their 5 were really heartbreaking losses here, but they are 2-5 on the season.
Yeah, and the defense is very, very good, and defense is going to keep you in games.
Yeah. Well, Riverbend gets the very late 26-13 victory over Woodridge. King George took on Spotsylvania in a annual matchup of rivals here. The Foxes jump out to a quick early lead, and they hang on for the 34-19 victory over Spotsy.
Yeah, 34-0 at the half.
Yeah.
And then Spotsy, King George maybe shuts it down a little bit. Spotsy makes a better game of it. But the Foxes sort of got back to what they've been doing. Bakari Brown, a big fullback with 6 carries for 93 yards. And of course, Jordan Alley, one of my favorite players in the area. He's just very athletic and around the ball. He's a hitter on defense. He's a runner on offense. 5 carries for 62 yards, scored a pair of touchdowns. And the Foxes, we talked about this last week. This was a big, big game for the Foxes. They're in the playoff picture, even at 3-3, they're in the playoff picture. You got Caroline, maybe you pick that win up. You still got some other tough games, but the Foxes are in the race.
They're certainly
they're alive and kicking.
I saw what you did there. Foxes are in the race. I get it, or they're in the hunt maybe. That wing T offense on both sides though. Reese Ricabo from Spotsy, 15 carries, 98 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I wasn't surprised to see either side be effective offensively. When they do it right, it can be very good. Certainly we've seen the Cortland model. That's what we're going with here. And I think they both executed pretty well. Spotsy maybe in the second half, King George in the first half. Foxes really needed this one. Big win for King George. Big win for King George.
Props to Spotsy, though. I've been impressed with the fight that's in this team. They did not give up. The comeback, they were down 34. It's a big road to try to make up that type of a deficit. But they put up 19 in the second half.
Yeah, and this has been one of, I think, the more competitive Spotsylvania teams, the last couple of years. And again, another team certainly alive in the playoff picture.
Yeah, it's not over.
They've got some hard games coming up, but even when you lose to Cortland, Cortland's got so many wins, Spotsy's going to net gain when it comes to their power points there.
Yeah.
And, if the playoffs started today, Spotsylvania playing at JM, that would happen right now. Spotsylvania is in if the playoffs started today. They don't, as it turns out.
They don't turn out.
They do not start today. But they would be. Spotsylvania still has a chance to make themselves a home in the postseason this year.
So it's the middle of October, and we have actually, I believe that was the first one of the season if the playoffs started today. It's the first one that I remember, at least. They don't start today, but it's moving quickly.
Sure.
King George with the 34-19 victory over Spotsylvania. Taking a look now at other games from around the area, Culpeper and Kettle Run. Culpeper having to come from behind in this game. They pull off the 21-17 victory.
Playoff team. Culpeper Blue Devils, Hunter Krim, 19 of 30, 260 yards, 2 touchdowns. Culpeper is going to make the playoffs and going to give teams a fit in the playoffs.
That offense is not one that you often see at the high school level. I mean, they throw the ball around a lot, and they're effective and efficient at it. Krim with a touchdown rushing the ball as well, so he's a dual threat.
Yeah.
And I don't doubt it. I'm not surprised.
Playoff team.
Yeah. Louisa, man, this was a close game. 8-7 victory over Powhatan.
2 similar styles. Louisa and Powhatan both love to run the ball. Joe Whalen again for Louisa having a nice year. 27 carries, 113 yards. Just the start of a really bright career.
Let's mention Quinlan Ragland here as well for Louisa. 7 tackles, including 4 tackles for loss, 1 sack. You don't get those kinds of numbers. As you were mentioning before when we were talking about Riverbend, it's hard to keep stats on the defensive side. Impressive defensive performance here for Ragland.
Louisa, playoff team? Maybe less enthusiastically than Culpeper. Playoff team.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Western Albemarle with a 36-27 victory over Orange.
Playoff team.
Okay.
we put the Freelance Star Friday morning feature jinx on Orange a little bit. We had a real nice piece on Jesse Lohr, their coach for this year.
Right.
It's still going great for Orange. Winnable games coming up. Got the big rivalry with Louisa coming up. Playoff team.
Okay.
Western's very good. Western, that's a good Western team.
And then Washington and Lee with a 20-17 victory over Lancaster. Playoff team?
Playoff team.
No doubt there, I don't think. So yeah. That's a look at the other games from around the area. The Week 8 schedule for Fredericksburg area high school football certainly looks interesting. We have a number of games with some very intriguing matchups. A few of them have some playoff implications.
No. All of them have playoff implications.
Okay, perhaps.
All of them.
How about we jump right in and start with the Freedom at Riverbend matchup. These Bears clinging to a potential playoff spot. They're only 2-5. Is it a must-win for them?
Every game, I'm not going to say every game is a must-win, but you look at what they have left, and I look at the Freedom game and I look at the Garfield game. Win those two games. Those are critical, crucial games, especially this one. Right now, Riverbend is 8th in the division of the 6A South. If the playoffs started today, Riverbend is going to Colonial Forge. They got a chance. Even at 2-5, the record they've played is so tough. The schedule they played is so tough that they're scoring power points. Especially with Cortland wins and Chancellor wins and Masconomet wins every time. It helps Riverbend out. The Bears need wins. This one's a big one. Freedom's got 3 wins. Lots of power points to be had, and Freedom 1 spot ahead in Riverbend in the standings. Big game for Riverbend.
Big game, absolutely.
Big game, huge game for Riverbend.
I think that it matches up well for Riverbend. Looking at the potential matchup, it should be an exciting game. I suspect it's going to be a close game. Riverbend has played a number of those. Yeah. This should be an interesting game. I'll be there.
Well, I think
I'm looking forward to watching it.
If you do the common opponent thing, I like Riverbend.
Yeah.
If you do the common opponent thing, I like Riverbend. They got to show up and play.
They have, so they're 8th right now in their half of the 6A South.
That's well said.
A couple of other, let's not try to do that again. A couple of teams that are a little bit farther up than them will be getting together here on Friday night. Colonial Forge visiting Hilton, both teams 6-1. Both teams obviously already have I think we can say these are already in the playoffs.
Yeah, these are playoff teams,
but they are really positioning here for home field, at least for their half.
And a great matchup in so many ways. Of course, Bill Brown was Hilton's coach, won so many games for them, so I'm sure he likes going and playing the Bulldogs every single time. Hilton with a really strong running game. This is going to be a good one. I think Colonial Forge's offense, they had about 1 really strong half against Forest Park and 1 pretty good half against Forest Park. Need the full game. Got to stop the run against Hilton. This is a big one. Thomasdale, Manchester, those are other teams in the mix to finish near that top half of the 6A South. those are teams that are going to be looking at this one. Forge is 1, Hilton 4. This is a huge one. Just a big game. Big game.
No doubt. But it doesn't stop there. We also have something that's a little bit more local, at least to the Fredericksburg area, a Stafford County matchup. 6-0 Mountain View meets a 5-1 Brook Point team. Wow, this is going to, we talked earlier about the dominance of 5A. This one certainly is going to, someone's going to have some bragging rights here.
Yeah. 80 combined points, 70.
You think so?
Man, I don't. The Brook Point defense, on the other hand, did a really, really good job against North Stafford. They had 8 sacks. They blocked some kicks. Brook Point's defense played really, really well against North Stafford. Mountain View 6-0, and their offense has not been stopped, even by Colonial Forge.
Right.
Mountain View's offense has been stopped by no one this year. Brook Point, this is a big tester for them, and another big one that's going to help sort out that 5A North. You got Mountain View, Masconomet, Brook Point, North Stafford, all in a clump, all near the top half of the region. This is going to be a big one as we spend these last 4 weeks sorting that out. Here's one of the first big, I think last week, North Stafford and Brook Point. That was the first one.
Yeah.
Here's the second one. Now you got Mountain View, Brook Point. This is going to be an awesome game.
I mean, we don't, as football fans, you don't often get to see matchups of two teams with such impressive records this late into the season at any level. So it's really something special to have that. And that's not the only one. We also have, dropping down to the 4A, James Monroe at 5-1, Chancellor now at 4-2, but a very strong 4-2. This also looks like a very intriguing game to me.
Yeah, and Chancellor.
I guess James. Let me correct that. JM3 at the 3A actually instead of 4A. But
I wouldn't let you get away with that. I gotcha. And this is a good one. Chancellor's looking for the bounce back against Cortland. I don't think Chancellor really doesn't want to lose again. You certainly would want to drop another game. You risk maybe falling out of that top half where you're at home in the first week,
right,
and you got a chance to be at home in the second week. You know, Chargers don't want to lose again. This is a big one. They got to pick it back up and regather themselves after the Cortland game. That's an emotional game, I'm certain. And you got a short week. You played on Monday, playing on Friday.
That. Yeah. So what do you think that this? It's been a strange couple of weeks. We had weather this past Friday, weather the previous Friday due to the hurricane that didn't end up in the nor'easter and all that. Well, a lot of rain that has postponed games. How's that impacted? We haven't talked much about how that impacts teams in preparation. You know, some of the games 2 weeks ago were moved up to Thursday. Yeah. Some were played on Saturday. Some were played on Monday. It's hard to keep track.
Yeah, you can have short weeks and crazy things going on. And the good news is you're talking about Battlefield District opponents who do the same thing every single year.
Yeah.
JM knows exactly what Chancellor does. Chancellor knows exactly what JM does. You know, these aren't unfamiliar teams. You know, for JM, I think the test is, I would go so far as to say this is the best offense James Monroe has played against since Dinwiddie, James Monroe's only loss. This is the best offense they've seen since that game. So the defense is going to get called upon here. You know, Cortland scores 3 touchdowns unanswered to end the game against Chancellor and run away with it. You know, JM's going to need something similar. They're going to have to find a way to shut Chancellor down, or you get into, you know, a shootout and you go back and forth and you score a bunch of points. I think Chancellor, JM, the defense is going to be tested for sure.
Man. Is there any way that we can spread these out so that we can sort of have a buffet of football games again this weekend? What does the weather look like on Friday?
You know,
I think the weather actually looks kind of nice, though.
I like that move. Let's go Thursday, Friday, maybe a Saturday afternoon game, maybe a Monday game. That sounds good to me. Let's do it.
It works out well for those of us who enjoy watching the games, maybe not so well for those planning and playing in them, but it certainly makes for an interesting time.
It's going to be an exciting week. Lots of power. You know I love PowerPoints. My favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
Lots of PowerPoint shuffles coming up this upcoming week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lots of great games. I hope that you see at least one on that schedule that intrigues you. Make it out and catch one of these great high school football games. Well, that is a wrap on an exciting Week 7 in Fredericksburg area high school football and the Varsity 360 Gridiron Report. Certainly appreciate your time, and I appreciate the time from the very good and talented Mr. Justin Rice. So, Justin, let me ask you real quickly. This past week, the 2 SCs lost their football coaches.
Sure,
so South Carolina, the coach Spurrier, the head ball coach, retires. Sarkeesian out at Southern Cal is dismissed. Have you gotten a call yet?
I can neither confirm nor deny, but if you guys are calling, I'll do it cheap.
Maryland's open too now.
Yeah, you know.
How crazy is it?
Lots of openings, lots of openings.
So what else is going on?
You know, not much. We got golf. You know, we talked about it a little bit today. I spent my day at high school golf and watching Riverbend and North Stafford and Stafford play well. And we got field hockey coming up here in a couple weeks. They're going to get going into the postseason. You know, Mountain View and Stafford have already played twice. That's exciting stuff. Oh, we got high school football.
Yeah.
PowerPoints.
You talking playoffs? It's playoff time almost. It's getting there. We're almost to the point.
They don't start today.
They don't start today. Yes. Just a fount of knowledge here. I always learn something from the good Mr. Justin Rice. I appreciate his time. It's a pleasure to spend a little bit of time talking sports with you.
Good to be with you. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thanks. Hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly appreciate you watching, and hope you check back next week when we will recap Week 8 around the Fredericksburg area in high school football. For the Virginia Varsity Sports Network, my name is Mark Coleman. Thanks for watching, everyone.